Hey guys, welcome back to Mondays at the Museum. I'm Carrie and I'm here at the Anna Bemis Palmer Museum in York, Nebraska. So we are back to our Vows and Veils section, part 2. We're going to look at the next 13 items in chronological order, and that means we're going to start with this dress here on the left. It belonged to Bertha Littler, and she wore it at her wedding to Abraham Gilmore on August 17th, 1909. Quite the long dress, and actually comes with this wedding booklet. And actually a lot of the pages are filled out, which is great. Next up, we have another 1909 dress, this time September 1st, 1909. It belonged to Nellie Kuntz, and she wore it in her wedding to Ambrose Stream. They had 5 children together. She passed away in 1942, he passed away in 1964, and they're both buried in the Waco Cemetery, and you can actually see a picture of them together right here. Next up is this wedding suit on its own. It's from 1911. It was worn by Thomas Kufal in his marriage to Barbara Mayers. They got married November 21st, 1911. He was a big farmer here in York County and then actually got into real estate. He registered for the draft in 1917 but never officially served. He passed away July 31st, 1971, and he is buried in Greenwood Cemetery. Here we have a dress and veil from 1918. It was worn by Emma. It's Schoenleber, in her marriage to Charles Califf. They got married Christmas Day, December 25th, 1918. They had 5 children together. Emma passed away January 28th, 1971, and Charles passed away August 14th, also in 1971. They're buried together in Greenwood Cemetery. Look at how great condition that this veil is, though. Just really awesome for 1918. And you knew inevitably we would hit this point, but 1923, if the year is ringing familiar for you, you'll see why here in just a second. So, wedding dress, 1923, February 20th, belonged to Bertha Graff, who had her marriage to Orville Keebaugh. She was a teacher, he was a farmer. They lived at a farm outside of Gresham. However, the main talking points aren't the dress or the amazing condition it's in for 1923. Or even the wedding booklet that includes even pieces of confetti or the shoes. No, the big talked about points are the wedding cake slices. The one on the back is from the wedding, 1923, and then you have a 40th anniversary and a 60th anniversary. And I don't know what they sprayed these with, what they dunked them in, if they air dried them, but they are not even crumbling. It's ridiculous, and it haunts my dreams. Moving on, we have this brown number, very flapper style here, 1926 wedding dress, worn by Ava Morgan in her marriage to Roy Miller in 1926. You can see pretty short in comparison to one of those earlier ones. Roy worked for a distributing company and registered for the draft in 1942 but never served. And Ava passed away December 10th, 1980. She's buried there with Roy at Greenwood Cemetery. Here we have a 1927 wedding dress that belonged to Frida. Oh goodness, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this one. It looks like Ruxdeichel. Here, you tell me. How would you pronounce that? In her marriage to George Klepper, they got married August 31st, 1927 at St. John's Lutheran in Waco. George was a farmer, served in World War I. Together they had 5 children, and you can see a picture of her in the wedding dress. You can see a little piece of the veil survive there. They are buried together now at St. John's Cemetery in Waco. Moving on to 1931 here. Check out the belt on this one. Very skinny dress. Barely fit this dress form. Worn by Thelma Blazer in her marriage to Sievert Peterson. They got married actually in Iowa, May 26, 1931. However, they did relocate to Polk County. Sievert was a farmer, raised livestock. Thelma passed away October 3rd, 1998, and Sievert actually lived until February of 2005. They're buried together in the Stromsburg Cemetery, and you can see a photo of them there. Here we have another lone suit. This one's from 1933. Earl Roswell Burke wore this suit at his wedding to Alice Myers, and they got married in Polk June 11th, 1933. He graduated from Stromsburg High School and attended York College. After that, he ran a tire shop and a service station there in Stromsburg. He was a pitcher for the town baseball team and also played violin in the town orchestra. And his wife Alice was a school teacher. In 1935, they moved to a farm 3 miles east of Stromsburg and lived out their remaining years. And here is their wedding day picture. This 1935 wedding dress belonged to Jean Williams in her marriage to Joe Bors Jr. They got married May 16th, 1935 at St. Patrick's in McCool. Check out that train down there. It was worn again by her granddaughter, Marianne Fitzpatrick, at her wedding in 1967, also at St. Patrick's. So, Jean and Joe. Joe passed away November 13th, 1989. Jean lived until the age of 96, but actually just passed away in 2011. They're both buried in the Wilbur Czech Cemetery. Here we have a 1935 wedding suit. This is on loan to us. It was worn by Mildred Romberg in her marriage to Claire Holmquist. They got married June 19th, 1935 in Omaha. Claire was actually a state senator and worked for a lumber company for many years. He passed away April 28th, 1972, and Mildred lived until January 6th, 1992. They're buried together in the Oakland Cemetery, and along with that comes the shoes and the program, and actually a telegram as well, which is really neat. You can actually read that announcing the marriage. So it was fairly common if you were in the military to get married in your military uniform, and thus you see this World War II Navy uniform. It actually belonged to James Francis Frank Price. He was an ensign in the U.S. Navy. He served in the South Pacific and was discharged in October of 1945. After the war, he returned to York to farm. He married Beverly Grocock there. They got married on June 19th, 1943. She worked for the Union Pacific Railroad and then moved to San Francisco and worked for the Southern Pacific Railroad while Frank was in the Navy. Check out how long this train is. It's just awesome. And look at how cool the top of that dress is there. They returned to York after his discharge. She passed away November 6th, 2014. And she's buried in the St. Joseph Cemetery. And Frank passed away actually in 1992, also buried in St. Joseph Cemetery. And last up in today's tour is this set right here. It's from 1944, so the wedding dress here, worn by Mildred Bloom, and the suit worn by her husband, Vern Klemps. They got married in 1944. He passed away March 13th, 1990, and then she actually lived until 2017, April 14th. They're buried together in Greenwood Cemetery, but check out the headdress kind of thing there on the veil. Great shape there. And that's actually a brown suit. I don't know if you can tell that on camera. Brown pinstripe there. And there is a photo of them in their wedding attire, which I think is really cool. And you've also got shoes. And you can see the bow there that was part of her bouquet, which you can see in the photo there. And that concludes part 2 of our Vows and Veils tour. Tune in next week for the remaining wedding items. We'll see you then.